Empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? First 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go.
Welcome to the Scoop World Order. It is really, really cold outside edition. For those of you that are in Ohio, in Columbus, guys, stay warm. It is brutal out, but we've got some great information to warm you guys up and heat it up tonight. Nevada Buck and I are going to be going live, talking about the latest in the Peach Bowl buzz. Bowl practice is broken. The kids are home. The coaches are home with their families for Christmas before they head down to Georgia to get ready for their date with the Georgia Bulldogs. We're excited for that on New Year's Eve on the 31st. Big time game. Big opportunity for the Buckeyes. Big opportunity for Ryan Day. Big opportunity for CJ Stroud and this throwing game. We got some great intel on some of the things that we're going to be doing against Georgia. We're going to talk about that for a little bit. But first, as always, we are thankful and grateful for you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this freezing cold Friday night, talking Ohio State football, talking transfer portal. We're going to go over a ton of topics. Comment down below. I've been forgetting to do that. Where are you guys from? Shout out where you're from. And also, who needs to step up for us to beat the Georgia Bulldogs? We're going to go through some of the guys that are our favorite candidates, some of the guys that are really buzzing during bowl practice, some of the Showtime guys, the young guys who are showing out. We're going to go through all that. Some big portal news popping off. I think January is going to be a big portal month for the Buckeyes. We're going to get into all of that. We appreciate you guys tuning in. And always, we're thankful for you guys. That being said, to bring in my good friend, Nevada Buck. Nevada, how are you tonight?
Doing good, man. You guys sound like it's cold back there in Ohio. Like you're shoveling the snow off the thing. You got the snow blower out there blowing the snow off the driveway.
God. I had it fired up, and it is, even with the snow blower, it's still brutal because it was just so windy and cold. I mean, it was -6 degrees when I was out there, and it was like I had gloves on, and my fingers were just completely numb. And you know, none of my my neighbors had even touched their driveway because it's just so cold. Like, I mean, really, there's no reason to go outside. Our trash service, it's so cold out. The trash service got canceled for 7 days because it's supposed to be that cold. And I mean, I get it because like if people are out there, man, they're gonna be getting frostbite. They're gonna be die. If I had to do 8 hours out there, there's just no way. I was out there for about 45 minutes clearing out the driveway. But man, it was brutal. But thank God we get to talk about Ohio State football. And things are starting to heat up. Nevada, what have you heard? Right now is like a great time to get some info because guys they're away, they're not at practice, they're not at meetings. What have you heard that has been going on in the WAC for the last 2 weeks during bowl practice? Recruiting is over now, signing day is over. I guess with the portal, it's never over. But what's some of the buzz you've heard from the Woody Hayes, from the practices, from Showtime, from some of the stuff that people are just dying to hear about?
Well, I think what's interesting has really been kind of the expansion of Brian Hartline's role in terms of the offensive game planning. And, you know, one of the big things was Kevin Wilson, as we all know, is going on to become the head coach at Tulsa. You know, sad to see him go. Love Kevin Wilson. Love everything about him. Thought he got a raw deal in Indiana. Really glad that he's going to become the head coach again. But, you know, he's agreed to stay on through the bowl, you know, the national championship game. But the interesting thing has been Hartline has really kind of become the second voice there with Ryan Day in the offensive game planning. And Brian's really had some impact already on the game plan. You know, Brian is you know, obviously a wide receiver by trade. You know, looks at things, you know, in kind of a wide receiver centric, you know, type of viewpoint on the world. And yeah, I think, you know, as we've talked about, Brian Hartline is going to become the offensive coordinator for Ohio State when Kevin Wilson leaves. I think that he'll be involved in the play calling. You know, whether that means full-blown play calling will yet to be seen. I think that's kind of an open item right now. But in terms of the game planning, he is certainly you know, making his impact felt, and you know, really talking about some things with Ohio State, talking about you know the expansion of their route trees, kind of expanding their routes a little bit deeper against Georgia, kind of advocating a more deep ball approach. Kind of looking for different ways to utilize mesh and other concepts to kind of confuse the Georgia defense, get some matchups out of the slot, use slot as just not just a possession, but as a stretch. So I think that the passing game is going to have a definitely distinctly different feel to it And a lot of that is the Brian Hartline impact on the OSU offense. So that's certainly something that I'm looking forward to seeing on the 31st, and something that's going to kind of give us a glimpse of what the next years are going to be here with Brian as the OC.
Yeah, I think, when you are a wide receiver, you're running the show. I mean, I can't imagine that we're more slanted towards the throw game than we are now. But with Brian running the show, I can't imagine that we're not going to be taking more deep shots. We're not going to be trying to feed these guys, stretch the field out. I think we've been too condensed. We haven't been taking the shots over the top like we have in previous years when we had Chris Olave, the Devin Smiths, the guys that are the true 4-3 guys that can really get behind safeties. And I think that's something that's going to have to change against Georgia. I think they're susceptible in the back end. I don't think their safeties are that great. Again, like if I got to attack Georgia's defense, it's not the front seven, it's the back four, and I am throwing it over their heads as many times as I can and as early as I can to let them know that we're going to be doing this. And, we might not complete them all. We complete a couple of them, you get those 60-yard touchdowns that ignites the crowd, it silences their crowd. And I think Jaden Ballard, who's been banged up for most of the year, I've known Jaden's father he's literally my age and he's from Massillon. I've known him forever. This could be his coming out party. This is a game where, we need guys that are unsung heroes to step up and play. I think that the 2 tight end looks and that kind of stuff isn't going to be as prevalent against Georgia just because that's what they want you to do. When Michigan went down to the Orange Bowl last year and played Georgia. Granted, it was a much better Georgia defense. They tried to line up and do the same stuff they did against Ohio State, and they got absolutely bushwhacked. So, I think that, if you want to get into a ground and pound running game, see who's tougher game against Georgia, you're going to get killed. I think if you get into a track meet with Georgia, I think you have a great chance. And the way our offensive line is constructed, 2 fantastic pass blocking offensive tackles. They combined gave up 1 sack all year. Granted, they haven't played Georgia's defensive front yet, and we have to help against Jalen Carter. But we have the edge guys that can protect versus their DNs. They lost their best defensive end, Nolan Smith, which is huge. So I like how things are trending. I love what you're hearing. Again, I've heard it's going to be bombs over Baghdad. It's just like that's the Jaden Ballard show. Stretch them out vertically, horizontally, get to the edge of the defense, make those guys run. Honestly, I love when you're going into a hostile environment that's loud. I love hurry up because everything's fast. There's not look back and all the kind of stuff that Ryan likes to do. And honestly, I think a lot of times Ryan Day just gets too cute, and I think it really hurts our offense when he tries to make everything perfect and everything. And like sometimes like you just have to. You have to go for the body blows. You got to go over the top and just call it and go with it. And don't try to adjust every little nuanced thing. Because football, like as much as you want to make everything about, precision, sometimes it's just about the power of just running guys over, beating guys up, and then eventually they break in the fourth quarter because there's cumulative damage that happens on those early in the game runs. It might only get 2-3 yards. I know it sounds like hyperbole, but when you keep banging on guys over and over again, and then eventually they break towards the end of the game. It happened against Alabama. It happened against Oregon. When we've been really good, it's because we've been really physical. It hasn't been because we've been chuck and duck, which we've been a little too much last year's against Michigan, much too soft. Nevada, talk a little bit about the emergence of Jaden Ballard. He's a guy that we've been hoping would show up. I think we need to get more out of our third wide receiver. Talk a little bit about his emergence.
Well, he's big speed. He's a guy that can, take the top off of a defense and really is, kind of create some of those matchup difficulties that Ohio State's looking for. And, what you have to remember, Ohio State this year, I think we were looking at the Ohio State defense, and, you look at the number of sacks Ohio State's got this year, and I think we'd all agree that it's been really, way below what we thought they would get and way below what we projected for Ohio State for this year. Well, Georgia sacked the quarterback less than that. Yeah. So, it's hard to believe, that this Georgia defense is not a sack happy type of defense. And, from an Ohio State standpoint, when you've got kind of a semi-elite pass protection unit up front, you've got those wide receivers, you can kind of create those difficulties for him. Adding a guy like Jaden Ballard into the mix and maybe, putting him in some difficult, typically teams like to put the slot receiver to kind of create him as kind of a possession guy. But with Jaden, you can run him into the slot and run him over the top and run him on those corner routes. And I think Ohio State's really trying to going to see if they can find some things that they like with him. They've got some plays designed specifically for him, and I expect him to have a big game. I think he could be one of those games where by the end of the game he's a household name, much like Marvin Harrison Jr. was last year after the Rose Bowl. So I'm expecting big things out of him, and I think he's ready for the moment.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember last year during bowl prep, I had a great source got into practice and was sitting there and said, they can't stop Marvin Harrison Jr. And I was like, the freshman? Like, he's got a handful of catches on the year. Can't stop him. He's the guy that Kerry Combs is going crazy because none of the guys could check him. None of the guys could contain that guy, especially one-on-one. He was a shredding guy. So, we hyped him up a lot going into the game. He ends up having 3 touchdowns. Any other year, he's the Rose Bowl MVP, but obviously Jackson Smith and Jigba had a running back going against him. So he had, 300 and however many yards or whatever he did. And he ends up, or him and CJ end up being the top 2 guys for the MVP. But I think, with the way things are trending, again, Nolan Smith is a huge loss for Georgia. He's their best end by far. He'll probably be a first-round pick. That's a big loss. And I honest to God, I've watched a lot of film, and for those of you that are on YouTube, which is all of you right now, 'cause we're live, these are Jaden Ballard. I think this is the first clip. He's running a wheel route. Pause this real quick. But yeah, he, it's funny because we haven't seen Jaden in the slot much. He's usually a Z, but here, this is a concept that I love where, you got your Z receiver, he kind of comes in flashes. Now, granted, this is high school tape, but we haven't seen Jaden play much at Ohio State. So these are just some of the things that he can do. He gets behind guys, obviously, little wheel route, easy stuff from the slot. Out here, he's the Z. He's like a perfect flanker, really, because he's such a physical, fast guy. He's been hurt though, because something that I asked someone inside the What He Hates is, why doesn't he return kicks? Why doesn't he return punts? Why do we put Emeka back there when Emeka is already our number 2 receiver? Emeka's playing 85% of the snaps. I'd rather take him off of special teams and save him and Marvin and let we have 15 receivers on the team. You'd think one other one could catch a punt or catch a kick, and they kept Emeka on it. But it was I was told because Jaden was dinged up. So Brian Hartline was really insistent on not putting him back as the punt returner, which he was a great kick returner in high school. It seemed like a natural thing just to kind of keep him engaged. But here he is as the Z. I mean, obviously he's wide open. It's funny on some of these plays he doesn't even get the ball, but he's so open. Here's one where I think the camera guy falls asleep. But you see these are the kind of big plays that he made in high school that he could easily do versus Georgia. Nevada, how much do you think the production of the number 3? That was like one of the big reasons I was excited about Jackson Smith and Jigba, because it was like, our number 3 receiver has given us basically no production all year. We're so top heavy with Emeka and Marvin. And here's the jet sweep. This is what we talked about. We've been doing a little bit of this. You put JB in the slot. I think this is something that these are just easy yards, nice easy play. The O-line doesn't really even have to block anybody. Here, they literally don't block anybody. They run like a counter the other way where the tackle and guard both pull basically his eye candy, and they hand it off to JB, and he gets the edge. And I mean, obviously this is high school tape. This is a Georgia Bulldog defense, but, even still, if he doesn't get 15, he might get 7 or 8, and you get the speed out on the edge. You get him a touch, a nice easy touch you manufacture. But Nevada, said a lot there. I think our number 3 receiver has been a big letdown this year, obviously, with Jackson Smith being out and replacing him with Julian, who hasn't been very productive. What are your thoughts on what Jaden could add as the 3rd guy with Marvin and Emeka?
Well, a couple things. One, Julian's been hurt. That's kind of a familiar refrain that we've been saying, and I think as a result, he got a little stiff, kind of coming down the stretch. He's healthy now, and so that's good news, and that's something that's it's going to make a positive impact for Ohio State in the bowl. But Jaden, like I said, Jaden does some really interesting things, and they've been experimenting with that slot jet sweep action, especially in short yardage, which is something that they've been trying to do. And instead of running into the walled front on the inside, trying to get the ball to the outside on that. And, I think Jaden could be a guy that they want to run that with because, like you said, you don't even have to block anybody. He's fast enough to get the edge. He'll get you 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yards just coming off. He's getting the ball at full speed. So I think that I should say I know that they're going to do some interesting things with him, and that their plan is to try to get him involved in the offense early. So I wouldn't be surprised on the first possession to see a ball go his way or something happen with him. And when it does, remember this podcast because I think he's going to play a key role in the Ohio State game plan on the 31st.
Yeah, and I'm just excited. Like I said, I think that these guys have a big opportunity, and you're gonna need guys that have been kind of silent all year to step up and be heroes, like JB. Tight end wise, it's probably way, 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 way too early to prognosticate anything about Joe Royer, but he's had a really good bowl practice. And that is a kid that dealt with some of the most unspeakable tragedy you could ever imagine. His mother passed away from cancer. God bless her soul as we go into Christmas. Very difficult year for Joe. Battled a lot, with that, seeing his mother decline and ultimately succumb to the disease. Again, that is a miserable experience. I've lived it. But that kid is coming on really, really strong in bowl practice. New focus, new energy. I think he's kind of, starting to come out of that a little bit, but talk about what a kid, I know we always kind of compare notes from what we've heard. Talk a little bit about what a guy like Joe Royer could add to the offense. Maybe not as early as this game, but down the stretch, with Keenan Bailey coming in. Keenan Bailey, like the one thing that's kind of underrated about Keenan Bailey and Brian Hartline coordinating the passing game together is they've got a lot of chemistry. They worked together for a long time. He was basically, an intern for Brian, worked with Brian. He's worked at basically every room in the building Keenan Bailey has, and now he's got his own room as the tight ends coach. Talk a little bit about what like a guy like Joe Royer could do with the way Ryan Day likes to run the two tight ends and Mitch Rossi moving on.
Well, I think that's the key. I think, Ryan Day loves that two tight end look, and he loves the flexibility that guys like that give to him. And if you look at it, they run them out of a lot of different spots. They run them out of kind of the wing back, the traditional tight end spot. Heck, they'll run them out of the fullback spot. So I think what Ohio State's trying to do is they're trying to utilize the tight end in a fullback position more and more, and kind of make that kind of a instead of a blocking fullback position, it's more of a receiving tight end position coming out of that. And Joe's perfect for a role like that. He's a physical kid who can really go down the field and really catch the ball. As you said, he's been through so much this year. It's too much to think that he's going to make some sort of significant contribution at this point. But down the road, he's a guy that we're really excited. I mean, he may end up being the best of the bunch. And we've talked about the tight end position and how Kate Sober's done some things that have kind of expanded for it. Well, Joe is a guy that, in my opinion, if he gets it right, if he stays healthy, if he's, he could go down as the best tight end to ever play here. I mean, he's that talented, and OSU sees that and is trying to utilize him appropriately. And as you said, he's been terrific in the Bull Runner, probably one of the stars, if not the stars, of Showtime. And really optimistic about him, and can't wait to see him do more on the field.
Yeah, I'm excited about him. CJ Hicks is getting back healthy. He was running a lot with the twos. I think Tommy Eichenberg could be coming back for another year. That is what I truly don't know. Truly think it's a coin flip. He's a kid that I think got robbed of being a first-team All-American this year. I think he had a really good year. I think the Michigan game cost us a lot in terms of awards and voting and all that kind of crazy stuff, because I think it cost CJ the Heisman. I think, like when you give up that much yardage, it knocks guys down a tier or two from first team All-American. Because Tommy made a bunch of second team All-Americans teams, but you don't get a tree for that. So it doesn't really matter after you don't make first team. But yeah, I think, it's going to be interesting to see what we do with CJ Hicks going forward, because I think he's the guy that's going to have to play. He got hurt, dinged up, was rolling. I think Matt Jones running with the ones is huge, because that is something that we really we're going to need, like, I mean, Matt Jones has to play the game of his life versus Jalen Carter. And, that's the game that could determine what he does next year. Because if he balls out versus Jalen Carter, he could become a draftable guy. I don't think he's a draftable player right now, which that's not a negative on him, but it's people don't realize how hard it is to get drafted as an offensive line. Michael Brewster was a 4-year starter. Alex Boone was a 3-year starter. Both those guys did not get drafted. Both those guys had stellar careers at Ohio State. Both those guys were All-Americans at Ohio State. So it's not a knock on Mac Jones when I say he's not going to get drafted. But if he balls out versus Jalen Carter, I think it's going to put a different light on him. And the thing about this game that I think the players know, I hope the players know, this is the only game the scouts will watch. They'll watch this, and if you're a big-time guy, they might watch you versus Michigan, but that's it. Like, they're not going to watch you versus Notre Dame or Wisconsin or any of the also-rans. There's 2 games they'll watch. They'll watch Michigan and Georgia because they want to see versus your best competition, best game you played is what it is. So, Nevada, building on that, any other thoughts from practice as we keep moving towards the Georgia Bulldogs?
Well, I just want to make one more point about what you said about the Michigan game. I mean, it's bad. I always say to you, and I've said this to you a million times, and I've said this on the board. Life, it's all about physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So you're always, whenever something terrible happens, you're always looking for the blessing because there's a blessing in there, created by the energy of the world. And, as bad as the Michigan loss was, the residual benefit may be you may get guys back next year that you might have not ordinarily gotten back. And
Sure.
we all know what the impact on something like that is. I mean, you add a guy like a Tommy Eichenberg back where you would have lost him, and that's like getting a 9-star recruit. So, from an Ohio State fan's perspective, we have to really take inventory of the good here and this time of year. I mean, we lost to Michigan. Maybe it drives some guys back to us. And on top of all that, we're still in the playoff. We still got a chip in a chair. We're really not much different than we would have been had we beat Michigan, other than, we'd be playing a different game. But you got to beat Georgia eventually. If you don't beat Georgia, you can't win the national championship. So, we're in a position where the pressure's off this team. If we'd have won and we're still perfect and we're going there, you got a lot of, the pressure's the favorite. We're kind of sneaking in under the radar, kind of see if we can kind of creep up on Georgia. And I know for a fact that the practices have been great. Ohio State has been sharp, and there's just not that feeling of pressure there for Ohio State that you would normally feel in a run up to a game this big. Ohio State is playing with house money, and they know it. And I think it's palpable with the team, and I think that bodes really well for Ohio State having a big effort and a better than expected effort on the 31st.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's something that people are really going to be I'd be excited. Like, I think that these guys, there was a real chance that team after Michigan was never going to play together again. It was over, opt-out city, and they got a new life. And again, that never happens in college football. It never happens in sports where you lose the game you need to win to get in, and then all the dominoes fall, and then the team's back ready to roll. And I think that these guys are going to take advantage of it. I really do. I think that Georgia has all the pressure on them. Ohio State has no pressure just because, when you look at like when national analysts and people that do picks and all that, they're all going to pick Georgia to win. And most of them will pick a blowout. Most of them will say that we're just going to show up and roll over. And we lost to Michigan by 3 scores. So Georgia's better than Michigan. So it'll be 4 scores, whatever. But I don't see it. I think that Michigan game is a lot closer than people make it out to be. And again, like it's crazy when you look at the score and the yardage and all that, but it was one little guy chunk play. So, when you go super aggressive on defense and one guy's out of the gap, that means it's closing time. It's over. It's a wrap. And that happened to us too many times. And again, is Jim Nils going to learn from that? I hope, just because, you can't have one guy get blocked and then all of a sudden it's a 75-yard touchdown every time. Cause that's not, again, that's, you're rolling the dice, man, and it's fun, and it's fun when you're winning. But when you play a team that has equal talent, which we don't see many teams that have equal talent because we recruit well, and we're just Ohio State. We've had better players in every team we've played for the last 30 years. So that's just kind of how it is. But it's never been more pronounced than now. So when we play a team that has equal talent, like a Michigan, a Clemson, a Georgia, you have to be able to coach it and do it the right way. and adjust when you make mistakes. And that's something that has been, it's been revealed the last 2 years versus Michigan. Again, thank God Utah started a running back at corner. That made our lives a lot easier in that Rose Bowl, even though it was a very tight game and one that we were probably lucky to win just because they were down so many guys. But, this is going to be a big game for the staff. But I like how things are trending. I think that these guys are going to be hungry. I think a lot of these guys have a lot on the line for the NFL, which, again, you can never, if people aren't motivated by their brothers or by winning a title or by playing for Ohio State, you can always count on, I got to ball out to get to the league. I got to ball out to get drafted higher. I got to ball out to be a first round pick, And so there's a lot of these guys that are going to be seeing guys that are the best guys they've ever played against. Like I said, Matt Jones, he's got the big sombrero. He's got Jalen Carter. So will Donnie Jones, our left guard. So those guys haven't seen defensive tackles like that in their lives. So, you're going to be seeing what you guys are made of. And I like it. I think that these guys will be jazzed up. And, if we're smart, we'll have a plan for those guys. We'll chip them. We'll move the pocket. We're not just going to sit there and shotgun empty and pray that these guys can block Jalen Carter. Because if we do that, CJ's he's gonna get killed. Especially if he's gonna not scramble, not move. Again, I watched Trevor Lawrence last night. Guard blows an assignment, linebacker in the A gap. Trevor Lawrence spins out, runs for a first down. So, again, when we say, CJ, you better get ready to run, we mean you better get ready to run. Because if they get a guy going scot-free, you got to be able to outrun that guy and go try to get positive yardage, because that's going to happen. This is how football is. Also, questions in the chat. Please fire away some questions. We're going to take some Q&A. Now, Nevada, any rebuttal to any of the things I just pontificated on?
No, I think I have a little slightly different view about Knowles and the aggression on defense. I don't think it's so much as if one guy gets blocked, you just can't have all 10 guys get blocked and then one guy make a bad play. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody's got to defeat a guy up front. You've got to beat your guy. And I think for Ohio State against Michigan, there was too many times where, one guy, made a mistake, but, other guys weren't getting home. Other guys weren't making a play. And I think that's really been a point of emphasis for Ohio State, during this bowl prep has been, hey, look, you got to win your battles. You got to go out there and win your battles. It's not okay just to get a stalemate. It's not okay just to not get pinballed off the line or thrown across the way. Like, you got to win. And Ohio State's been placing a heavy emphasis on winning during the bowl prep, and we'll see how that pans out in the thing. Because I like the aggressive style. I would much rather go out of my shield blitzing than I would sitting back and getting beat 6 and 7 and 8 yards. Playing the zones off the thing. And I recognize that sometimes you're going to get beat and you're going to give up big plays and you're going to lose. And I'm not saying I'm okay with that, but I prefer that style than I would to let them just move it down the field, throwing 7 yards out all the way down. And that's just personal preference. I think there's no right or wrong answer on that, but I didn't have any problem with Knowles dialing up some blitzes and bringing some action. I like the silver bullets, and I hope he brings that against Stetson on the 31st, and let's make Stetson beat us.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw on some film of Jihad Carter. This is a guy that On 3 projected. We are the leaders here. My face, unfortunately, is covering up the Ohio State logo. He's a corner from Syracuse, transfer portal guy. And again, there's a lot of things that can change. I think Ohio State is going to be doing most of their damage come January with the visits. But no, I totally get the go out on your shield mentality, because, sometimes death by 1,000 paper cuts isn't any more fun than, getting your head chopped off by a guillotine, I guess. So this is Carter's film. But Nevada, Mike Hall was a name that was brought up to me, really, really starting to round into form. Now, I know I'll say all this, and Larry Johnson will play him 7 snaps versus Georgia, which I think is insane. But he was the guy that was brought up. Again, my guy who was at practice was watching it, and he said his first 2 steps are just incredibly fast compared to he watch all the defensive tackles do one-on-one pass rush, and he said his first 2 steps are just out of this world fast and quick, and he's explosive. And I always liked Mike because he's a gym rat. He's a weight room guy. He's a guy you can't keep him out of the weight room. And a lot of big guys, a lot of offensive linemen and defensive tackle type guys, they're not gym rats. A lot of these guys are big and lazy and allergic to the weight room. And Mike is not that. Mike works like he's a linebacker. He's got that itch to always be getting stronger, getting more explosive. Because again, like you can't ever be strong enough when you play football. Like you're never like, man, I'm too strong, or you can be too stiff, you can be too slow, too weak, but you can't be too strong. And when you're in that weight room, the stronger you get, the harder it is for guys to manage you. That's why guys like Aaron Donald are so hard to go against, because he's so physically strong, so physically gifted, and he's a guy that puts in the work. That's why you see his dad was a big trainer, lifter guy. They had a basement gym and a little dumpy gym, but he started lifting them early, and he got big and fast and explosive, and he's become probably the best defensive tackle that's ever lived. Nevada, your thoughts on Mike Hall going forward?
Well, I think one of the recognitions that Knowles made after the again, they've been pretty hard on Mike and on Tyleik Williams, because those two guys, we talked about that what I said earlier about the importance of beating your guy, and sometimes beating your guy, beating the guy and staying gap sounds like, look, obviously you want both of them, but I think the emphasis now is on beating your guy, and Tyleik and Michael have had their spots limited because they haven't been as gap sound, they haven't been as responsible, but I think they're going to let those guys rip a little bit more against Georgia, and understand that guys behind them are going to have to live with the consequences, and signal to them that they're going to be letting it rip, because they need to win some battles up front. And I that was one of the big things that I've been hearing out of the bowl prep, is that Tyleik and Michael are going to be a little bit more unleashed, and I think that's a recognition by Knowles that he might have been a little bit harsh on the younger guys. And I think we're going to see more action out of them against Georgia, and whether it pays dividends or not, we'll see. This is again one of those, more risky. Let's see what type of return type of investments. But for me, that's how I play it. I think they're type of, I'm tired of, and I'm not going to name names, but we all watch the replay of watching guys get picked up and thrown like little children against Michigan on the interior of the line, and Tyleik and Michael will not have that happen to them, and I'd rather play with them and live with the mistakes they make than watching some of our older veterans that get picked up and thrown around like small children.
I'm trying not to name names. I know exactly what player you're talking about, and I know exactly what player you're talking about, because it was really bad, and it was when we needed it the most. They kind of gave us the least, and it hurt us. We had a guy get jacked up, double team, and they took it for 75 yards. I think it was the first one, the one where we really needed it, where it was a one-score game, and they handed off, little nothing zone play, and our guy gets ejected out of the stadium, and then the running back's just gone, and that's hard to watch. And again, I think that Mike and Tyleik are going to see a huge uptick in snaps, because there's a real chance those guys could hit the portal if they don't end up playing. So sometimes, like when you watch spring ball and you see Evan Pryor and G. Scott get featured, after you've been hearing rumors about them hitting the portal, then this game you're going to see. Again, I would flip the stat counts. Teron and Jerron can play 17 and 15 plays. I play Mike and Tyleik 50 plays each. I just flip the script, because those guys, Teron and Jerron are both gone. This is it. Fawn for a while, have fun. And play these young guys. Let them play. Let us turn them loose. Let the dogs eat. No more of the, they're not ready. The snap count. It's not the jack linebacker. I would play, I don't know how much I'd play the 3 defensive end look, but I would rotate Jack Sawyer in and give JT more of a blow, because I think JT wears down, because towards the end of the Michigan game, he was getting crushed. And I think you got to just rotate him in a little bit. I'd rotate 3 DNs. I'd play Jack, JT, and Zach Harrison as equal as possible. I think those are by far the 3 best defensive ends we have. Next year, Caden Curry is going to be in that mix. Obviously, without getting Mateo Uiagalelei, who's a guy who a lot of us projected to go to Ohio State, that's a huge bump for Caden Curry, because Caden's he's gonna have to be that third dog next year when Zach Harrison goes on to the NFL. And again, maybe he's a guy that could give you 5 snaps, 10 snaps. Because again, when you're playing these big games against Georgia, man, a healthy rotation. You're going to be going against the biggest, most physical team. You've gone against a team that was in the top 2 for the Joe Moore Award for the top offensive line. Rotating these guys is never a bad idea, but you got to make sure that the counts are right. You got to play the guys that are productive. Because my biggest beef with Larry Johnson's rotation is he plays the guys that aren't productive over guys that are much more productive in fewer snaps. So, when Mike Hall and Jack Sawyer lead the team in sacks with 4.5 sacks, which is a paltry number when you remember Chase Young had like 15 sacks or whatever he had the year that he broke the record. I mean, leading the team with 4.5 sacks is almost embarrassing. But then you look at their total snap counts and their efficiency, and I'm like, imagine if they actually played like a full, it'd be like if you had a guy that had 20% of the at-bats of most of the Major League Baseball regulars that led the league in home runs or led the team in home runs. Like, wouldn't you think to give them more at-bats and let them produce and see if they can maintain that pace with a full snap count? Maybe, maybe not. Keep the questions coming. Appreciate you guys as always. Sawyer isn't fast enough to cover breast. Again, like, this is one of the things that drove me nuts. And again, I'm not just trying to pick on Jim Knowles over and over again. And again, you guys, this is Jahad Carter's, this is his tape. This is a corner that we're in the transfer portal. When we dropped Jack Sawyer and that was, we talked about exotic blitzes. Nevada Buck had a big nugget about, we're going to run the most exotic defense you've ever seen. Some of the crazy stuff. We blitzed 3 safeties on that play and we dropped Jack Sawyer into coverage, which again, that's great when you're trying to stop a slant, a short slant. You drop him kind of right into the hole there in case they do run a quick slant versus an all-out pressure. But if you drop Steele Chambers into coverage when they make that little completion and their cornerback can't get the guy on the ground, Steele can probably make that play. Jack Sawyer, who's probably a 4.7-ish guy, he can't get there. Steele's a 4.5 guy. So when you say it's a game of inches, those are the little nuanced things that you talk about. Yeah, I do recognize the Sawyer. So if we put Jack Sawyer on Brock Bowers, we're going to lose by probably 100 points. But Nevada, any rebuttals to any of the things I said? I'm going to switch this film out real quick and see what else we could throw up here for a little bit.
Look, dropping the defensive end is always it sucks when it doesn't work, and when it does work, it's like it's defensive genius. And you're right, he was sinking into that spot. It's a 3rd and 8. You're looking for that slant. Michigan loves to run that play. If they do, and he picks it off and he takes it to the house, it's great. But it didn't work out, and then it kind of put him in a bad spot because he's trying to run a guy down in coverage. Probably not a good matchup for him. But let's go back to Jack Sawyer just for a second. There is no bigger fan of Jack Sawyer on the planet than me. But he looks stiff to me. He looks stiff. I don't know if the added weight. I mean, I don't know. And again, what I'm going to say is going to be blasphemous, and maybe people go, Nevada, you're out of your mind, and you might stalk off the set in disgust on this comment. But I wonder if he's better playing at 230 and playing with some bend and playing, because he just looks stiff to me. And I know that's weird to say about a guy who's, a 5-star, can't miss, kid. And there's no better kid in the world than Jack Sawyer. Nobody that I'm rooting for more than Jack Sawyer. But he doesn't look as impactful as I thought that he would look. And I don't know what that is. And I know we talked about him adding weight this year so he could, be a little bit more physical, not get bounced around by some of those big things. But I wonder if he needs to go the other direction and drop weight and play, skinnier and faster and more athletically. And that's my thought. I'm welcome to be called dumb because I've been called dumb before, but that's my thought. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, fire that up in the chat. I'd love your thoughts on that as well. I think if I was Jack, I would take yoga twice a day, every day until next season starts, just to get his hip flexion going, get a little more fluidity going. Super strong kid, fantastic against the run. But I just think that, to really to take that next leap as a pass rusher, I think flexibility is everything. I think bend is everything. I think the best pass rushers, they're both powerful and they've got like this factor that I don't know how else to describe it other than they're just slippery. Like they're hard to block. They're hard to to keep a hold of. That's why I call it like they're slippery. Like when you watch Nick Bosa versus the tackle, he's slippery. Like guys can't keep their hands on him because his hands are so good. He's so quick. His hips are so good that he gets past guys. And then you watch other defensive ends, and it's like they're the giant. They're in the giant sumo suits that they have at the fair, and they just kind of like Velcro to each other. And they, like Zach Harrison, who's having his best year he's ever had. Last year, it was like he would rush the passer, and it was like Velcro. It was like a magnet to the tackle, and he couldn't get off him. And I think it's explosion, it's speed, it's flexibility. People never think of flexibility in football just because it's like what ballerinas do. But I think, if I coach an offensive line room, I would have my guys work flexibility every day. And the only way you can really do it is yoga, because that's like something where it's not just like, reach down, touch your toes and do hurdler stretch and that kind of thing. I think you have to really challenge yourself, because going into my senior year, I started taking yoga every day, and I hated it because I wasn't good at it. I wasn't strong. But man, when I started to practice and my hips loosened up and I could feel how much power, because you can generate a lot more power when you're not stiff. If you could really, if you're open and you could take better steps, not to mention it's a massive way to prevent injuries, especially to your lower half, especially to your ankles. If you have stiff ankles and someone rolls up on you, something's going to pop and you're probably going to have a really bad ankle sprain. But if you have like nice loose ankles, someone rolls up on you, it's not a big deal because your ankles are just naturally loose because you've trained it. So, that was something that I really pushed myself on to challenge myself, because I hated going to yoga. I sucked at yoga. I had to use like the straps and the blocks and all the stuff that guys that aren't flexible have to use, that aren't any good at it. But, it made a dramatic difference in the overall ability for me to play football. And again, if I could go back to my 16-year-old self, I'd say, look, put your toughness aside, go to yoga class, go get stretched out, and your stock will just skyrocket, because you'll be so much more fluid. You'll be so much less injuries. Looser hamstrings, hips, ankles. And again, I think that all adds up to make you a better pass rusher, which again, it sounds strange and weird that grown men taking yoga helps your pass rush, but you get to that next level, man. It's about how good are your hands, how powerful are you, and how well can you bend the edge. And the best way you can bend is to literally physically be able to bend. So keep these comments coming. Oh, here's a good one, Nevada. Any word on the percentage of OSU fans showing up to the Mercedes-Benz games? I mean, we sold our allotment out about as fast as humanly possible. Nevada, what's your projection for the amount of fans that we're going to have showing up?
I think it's going to be about 30-70, but I mean, Ohio State's going to show up. I mean, it's not going to be it's going to be a home game for Georgia, but it's not going to be like it's between the hedges and it's 100% Georgia fans. I mean, the secondary ticket market is really, really strong for the ticket right now, and Ohio State, like you said, sold out their allocation in a matter of hours, and really has been asking for more. So I think Ohio State fans are definitely going to show up, and I think the people that do are in for a treat, and really in for a great show, and out of the cold of Columbus, Ohio. So win.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that we'll have a nice showing in terms of Ohio State fans. I think that Georgia fans probably have a little bit of fatigue from last year. They went to the championship game last year. That's a really expensive ticket. They're the 1 seed. A lot of teams are projecting them to go, and again, this happens with Ohio State fans too, where it's like, well, I'm not going to go to this one because I want to go to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is going to cost 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand, whatever the tickets, flights, hotel, the whole shebang. And I think Georgia's fans are like that. They SEC championship's always expensive. They played, the Orange Bowl last year. Then they played the championship against Bama last year. Those are expensive tickets. So I think when you become like a truly elite, top dog-ish, Alabama-ish type program, there gets to be fatigue among the fan base, because these trips are expensive. Like when you have to go to get the tickets, and obviously it's a huge deal for Georgia fans, the fact that it's in state, because if this game is being played in Cleveland, it'd be a lot different ticket situation, a lot different travel situation for Ohio State fans. But I do think there are people that hold off. because they want to go to the championship game. They want to go to the national title game because that's the one that's for all the marbles. And, Georgia fans, I think, are looking at it a lot different than Ohio State fans, because I think a lot of Ohio State fans think that this is going to be it, not going to make it. I think we've got a great shot to make it to Los Angeles and play TCU or Michigan for the national title. I think that our guys are hungry. I think that our scheme's going to be great. And I think that, the way, Georgia, they've got like kind of this God tier thing where people think they can't be beat. And I don't buy it. Like, I watched their defense. I watched their defense last year, studied it profusely, and that defense was easily the best defense in the history of college football. They lost 15 NFL draft picks off of that team, and a lot of those guys were on that defense, and a lot of those guys went first round, high tier, number one overall type guys. And I just don't, and Nakobe Dean wasn't a first rounder, but he was the guy that was like their most decorated guy other than their big nose guard, Jordan Davis. But I don't see it this year. And again, it's still the best defense we've seen by far, but it's not like God tier like last year's defense was. PJ Studio, I appreciate the super chat. Let me get this up on the screen for you, my man. Appreciate you. All right. Do you think Tegra Tshabola can make an impact on the O-line next year? That is a great question. I feel like he was able to hold on to his red shirt. I believe he only played in 4 games. Do not quote me on that. But it was a little stunning that he was the left guard when the second team went in early in the season, when we were playing some of the rum-dums early in the year, the Toledos and the Arkansas States. I saw Tegra. It was funny. I was literally eating at Adriatico's with Jerry Kokian and his family, something we like to do on Fridays for lunch. And I saw Tegra. I said hi to him. He looked great. Like, I was stunned at how much weight he'd lost, how much thinner his face was. Really nice disposition, really great kid. Again, if I'm those kids, I'm eating iron and crapping thunder, man, because like there's going to probably be 4 spots open on the O-line realistically. If Matt Jones decides to move on, if Luke Whippler goes pro and both tackles are gone, there are 4 open spots, and it's a pretty young room. I know they're looking at a couple of transfer portal tackles, but I think, Tegra being the first guy in as the second offensive lineman, at that left guard spot with that second crew, that means he's passed up on a lot of these guys that are second and third year guys. He's passed them. Those guys are probably going to move on. I bet a few of them are going to hit the portal after the national championship game. But if you got a kid who's a true freshman passing you and you've been in the program for 2-3 years, that doesn't bode well for your future. I mean, you better, and again, that's, I don't know if that's a wake up call or what it is, but good for Tegra. Don't wait around. Like when I was a freshman, I showed up in August. I showed up August 5th. We played September against the Washington Huskies, and I was the second team left tackle. I made the 2 deep out of camp. I had a great camp. I wasn't a guy that enrolled early. I think it's a lot easier to make a big impact for any of these high school kids because a lot of them can come in the winter. Like, a lot of these kids they're going to be here right after the bowl game, and they're going to be going through winter conditioning. They'll go through spring football, go through summer conditioning. Like, back in the olden days, like when I played, I just showed up on August 5th. I couldn't enroll early. I couldn't graduate early because my high school didn't allow that. So I literally showed up first practice. I didn't know any of the plays. I'd never even seen a playbook before, which in football is really hard to do. And I just went out there and just relied on natural ability and grit and skill. And it worked, and I ended up being second team left tackle my freshman year. Didn't end up playing because they ended up redshirting me. And I frankly didn't want to play because the second team lineman, we were so bad on offense in 2003 that the second team offensive line played, I think, like 6 minutes the whole year. They played against Indiana and they played against Washington. So that was it. The rest of the time it was the first team O-line the whole time because we were so bad. So, my goal was to start for 4 years, and I couldn't do that playing as a true freshman. So the next year I was able to start as a redshirt freshman, and I started all 4 years, that was my goal. Nevada, your thoughts on Tegra? I think, bright future. That's a kid that a lot of people think underrate. But, like I said, if, we can say whatever we want, but the fact that Justin Fry had him as his second team left guard right from Jump Street, that says more than anything I could really say.
Well, I mean, Tegra, like you point out, it's body transformation. I mean, you're talking about a guy that reduced his body fat by 6%. And he looks great. He was a little heavy coming out of high school. Coach Mick's done a great job with him from a diet standpoint, from a workout standpoint, and I think I'm expecting big things out of him, and I think that starts next year. So he's definitely giving me the mix for a starting spot, and you always look for those offensive linemen that are, as you say, star rankings don't matter once you get to Ohio State. That stuff goes out the window. And for a kid like him, he's really put in the work. It shows. You can see it. You can see it in his body. You can see it in the weight room. You can see it on the practice field. And I think you'll see it on the playing field next year.
All right. This is a great question. This one kind of caught my eye. Appreciate this, Mike. Do you think, like, bringing in 3-star guys who are a legacy, I assume this is Will Smith Jr., because their dads were former stud Buckeyes, but maybe don't have the current big-time ability, and maybe they're rich soft. I'm not sure the question. I think it's basically, do I think that it's worth bringing in a guy like Will Smith Jr., whose dad was an All-American, and, Will, there are people that don't think he can play, they think that he's underrated, whatever. I like the kid. I think he's a great kid. I think he's a tough kid. His dad was one of the baddest guys to ever wear the uniform, one of the toughest players in Ohio State history, one of the best players in Ohio State history, first-round pick. Guy that I literally blocked every day as a freshman when he was a senior, when he was at the top of his game. So that guy made me into the tackle I became, because I had to block him every day. And he was, he went like 18th overall to the Saints, one of the meanest players in Ohio State history. But really, like, I learned so much from Will Smith that it didn't make my life easier, but it really taught you, hey, you really got to eat your Wheaties and come to work every day. Because when you get to block Will, it's never going to be easy. It's always going to be hard. It's always going to be miserable. But if you can hang in there against Will, you can hang in there against anybody. But I like his kid. I think that when you do a broad stroke question like this, I don't think it's fair. I think you really have to look at it on a case by case basis, based on the kid. I don't think that the dad has any relevance in this, because again, we talked about Joe Royer a little bit ago, and I was there the whole day when it was Joe Royer versus Luke Lachey. That was like an all-day tryout. Kevin Wilson ran the tryout between the two guys, literally back to back to back. Like, and you're taking one of them. You probably could have fit both of them, but you're only taking one. And we ended up taking Joe Royer over Jim Lachey, and obviously Jim Lachey he's our color guy. He's a guy that you have to see on the plane every road trip. The Paul Keels and Jim Lachey, they fly on the plane with the team. So when you're Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day, and you got to see that every day. You got to go see, hey, we didn't take your son, we took this guy, Joe, who's a great player. So you better be sure, and there better be significant space, because if it's even, you got to take the legacy. Jim Lachey is one of the great Buckeyes of all time, one of the kindest guys, one of the nicest guys I've ever been around. So to tell his son no and force his son to go to Iowa when he dreamed of being a Buckeye his whole life, you better be sure, and I think they got that right. I saw Luke this year, great kid. I think he's got upside, but I think Joe's probably better. But you got to be real sure when you're dealing with these legacies, because it's every kid's dad thinks that he should be a scholarship player, and I disagree with that. I've got a 5-year-old, obviously a long way away from playing, but I have no expectations he'll play at Ohio State. I don't care if he plays at Ohio State; he can play wherever he wants. Doesn't matter to me. But not every dad's like that. Not every dad believes that their kid shouldn't be an automatic legacy offer. So, Nevada, what are your thoughts on that? It'd be great to just kind of get like a little outside view on that.
Well, again, you said it perfectly. It just comes down to the kid. I mean, when I look at the tape and I watch Will Smith Jr., I like him. I think he's got every bit as much a chance to be a contributor as a lot of the other kids coming in, and we'll see how it goes out. I mean, somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong in this one, but for my money, I bet he's going to be a contributor to Ohio State, and I think it was a worthy offer.
Yeah, I do too. And Mike, this is also great intel. He says he coached Jelani Thurman at the U.S. Army Bowl last week. All-world-looking athlete, but son of a pro, won't be as hard or tough. Mick will get Jelani. Honestly, I don't know if that's a Jelani thing. It might be. I just think that's just how the current generation is, and I'm not trying to act like I'm, the old guy from Gran Torino or anything, but it's just like, that's just kind of how it is. Like a lot of these kids, they come out of high school programs, they have coaches that are more buddy, that aren't going to really get up in them like Mick will, and like the way Urban definitely did. So, these guys got to adjust to a whole new culture when you come to Ohio State. Because like when we had Urban and Mick together, I mean, it was brutal. Like some of these kids, they're ready to quit. They're ready to go home after a week because it's like, it's like going to Hell Week. That first couple of weeks, man, they're breaking you down and they're making sure that you know what it is and how we do things. And it's not coddling. It's not how a lot of high school coaches work with kids now, where they're scared to challenge them. They're scared to really get up in their grill. Like with Mick and Urban, it was like they didn't care. I mean, they were there to push you and scrape every little bit of greatness they could get out of the far crevices of your life, because that's not a normal way of doing things, especially in high school sports, because unless you're a guy who's like a Nick Saban who's been around for a long time and had a lot of success, that gets frowned upon by high school administrators now. It gets frowned upon by parents now. Like hard coaching is a relic of the past, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think that kids need to be challenged. I think kids need to be firmed up a little bit, toughened up a little bit. My high school coach was, he was a Nick Saban guy. He was the guy that Nick Saban actually offered the DB coaching job when he was at Toledo to my high school coach. He didn't take it. He joked with me a couple weeks ago. He's like, "Can you imagine where I'd be if I'd have taken that?" I was like, "Yeah, you'd probably be in the SEC making $2 million a year as a coordinator." And he just dies laughing because he's a really sound, sharp football coach, but he was best friends with Nick Saban, and they have the same mentality, the same toughness, the same get after it, the same hold accountable, and that's really lost among current coaches and current high schools. And because again, parents they'll come marching in, and you yelled at my Johnny, and you yelled at my kid, and how could you? You hurt his feelings. He's sad now. Like, and I don't think that's good. I think it's actually terrible for the kids. I think the kids need to firm up a little bit. But Nevada, you've seen it in youth sports, high school sports. Kids coming into Ohio State. I think this is one of the great points you always make about Ohio State football, and how you always say you're always excited about every single recruit. Talk a little bit about that, because not every kid can adjust to the way Ohio State, is.
Well, look, I talk a lot about minor league baseball. Minor league baseball, when you come to minor league baseball, the big challenge in minor league baseball is that you got to ride a bus, it's 12 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours to the next game, and then get off the bus and play in 2 hours and do it. And it's a miserable existence. So the best players don't win out in minor league baseball. It's the ones that are the mentally toughest. And say same thing with Ohio State football. It at some point it stops being about just pure athletic ability, and it's about who is mentally tough enough to handle the criticism, to handle the rigors of classwork, schoolwork, trying to maintain some sort of social life and stay on track in terms of doing it. And we see it in every sport. I see it in youth sports. I see it in hockey. I see it with my own kids, and it's those ones that can stay mentally tough and do it. And that's why for me, I prefer a tough, straightforward type of approach as opposed to a more subtle, mealy-mouthed kind of family, kind of pseudo yes, it's all good and huggy, but really no, and then they're going to stab you in the back. I prefer that guy just stand up, tell you what the expectations are, and you either live up to them and you can or you can't, because football's not for everyone. This is not a sport that everybody can play. And so, for me, I like the tough approach. I like the direct approach. And, I applaud that type of coaching, because I think it's an honest approach. It's an honest approach to life. And I really respect that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's important to be direct with kids. I think that when they look back at their college experience, 3, 4, 5 years at Ohio State, when they look in the mirror, can you and your coach both say, we did everything we could to get everything possible out of that kid? Because I look at like kids that I coach, like Taylor Decker, freshman year, great, one of the nicest kids, one of the smartest kids, wasn't a real tough kid, was a kid that had to, we had to coach up. His sets were a mess. Had to get them all. And he was well coached in high school. This is nothing against his high school coaches, but he's a guy, big jump up to Ohio State from Vandalia Butler. Great kid, worker. I remember I talked to his parents after a game one time, and they're like, how's Taylor doing? And I was like, he's going to be a star. He's going to be unbelievable. And they were shocked I said that, but I wasn't saying that so that they'd like me. I just said that I knew what was inside that kid. He's a tough kid, but Ed Warner and I were really tough on that kid. And and it wasn't because we wanted to be big meanies or hard, but you want to scrape every little ounce of greatness out of a kid so that when it's time to go, he can look back and say, man, there ain't nothing left. And then he goes and he walks on the stage, Roger Goodell, he hands him the jersey, first round pick, Pro Bowl alternate this year, $75 million contract, whatever. That is what when you're a coach at Ohio State, that's what your end goal is. You want a guy there's nothing else we could have done. And then there's guys that on the flip, we had Kyle Dodson, who was actually rated ahead of Taylor. And we tried everything to get that kid to like football and to want to be great and to do the right things and whatever. And I'm telling you, at Ohio State, with Urban and with Ed, and when I was there with Mickey Marotti, it was impossible to not be good. You look at the guys we coach that I coached personally for 3 years. Corey Lindsley, highest paid center of all time. Andrew Norrell, highest paid guard of all time. Jack Mehort, second round pick. Taylor Decker, first round pick, $75 million contract. Pat Elflein, Remington winner. That was our line room in 2012. And when we inherited that room, nobody thought anything of those guys. Corey Lindsley was going into year 4. He'd never started a game. And now he's the highest paid center in the NFL. So, we beat the tar out of those kids, man. We beat the tar out of those kids, but we made them great. And those kids, they had to buy in, and they did. It was a forced buy-in, but they did buy in. And, do they feel bad that it was hard back then? No, because they've made, $50 million each. So it's not, that's just how it is. And the guys that didn't make that kind of thing, we treated them the same way. But, at some point, everybody reaches their peak and guys fall by the wayside. But, the method worked. There was a method to the madness, and I was proud of that. And that's something with Tegra and with these coaches. The one thing that when you're a coach at Ohio State that you want to make sure is that when these kids are done, when they've exhausted their eligibility, have you gotten everything out of them that you can possibly get out of them? And that's something that's really important. I'm going to take some more questions about any rebuttal to that, because that was a little bit of a long one.
No, that was a long. I didn't remember what the question was. That was such a long answer. So it's are we talking about Duron Carter, or what are we talking about anymore?
I don't know.
I don't even know. I've completely lost track. So let's go back to the question book.
All right. Christian McCaffrey. Oh, that's good. Mike, you're great, man. I'm going to have to interview you. He says Arvell Reese was a dog. That's good. Okay. Here's a good question. Nevada, could Justin Fields throw the ball? Can someone help me with the narrative that Justin Fields can't throw the ball? I'm tired of seeing it. Do you believe that Justin Fields can throw the ball?
Justin Fields?
Yeah.
Yes, Justin Fields can throw the ball.
See, I don't get when people say he can't throw either. I don't think he has anybody to throw to, but when he in 19, when we had Olave and Wilson, I never thought Justin, because the funny thing about Justin Fields when he played for Ryan Day is that he didn't really run the ball very much. Now in the NFL, he's a 1,000-yard rusher because he has to run the ball because the O-line's so bad and he doesn't have any skill guys. Plus it gets cold, but I always thought Justin was a great thrower. But that's like one of those narratives they put out there.
Go watch his pro day. We have it on the site. Man, he can throw the ball. But like you said, it's funny how he has become a runner, because he was a reluctant runner at Ohio State. He was never fully, I'm all in on the running thing. And now to watch him in the NFL, it's just I have so much respect for the guy for what he's done and how he's done it. But yeah, he can throw it for sure.
Mitchell Swan says, it's a great question. Nevada, what are your thoughts on Devin Brown? Have a strong feeling Dave will end up going with him next year over McCoy due to his athletic edge and gamer mentality. Your thoughts on Devin Brown?
Yeah, Devin's my guy. I love Devin Brown. I think Devin Brown's going to be a great quarterback at Ohio State. And I think he'll bring some swagger back to that position. I think he'll bring some toughness to the position. He is not afraid to run the football. He loves to run the football. So, no, I mean, you're talking about a guy that was the number one quarterback in the country by some services, the number one player in the country by some services. And people don't talk about him, or they forget that he's even in our quarterback room. But I think he's the guy. I think he's going to be the guy that wins the battle. If he doesn't, then I tip my hat to Kyle McCord, because that means Kyle's playing at a really high level. But if I had to bet right now, I'd say Devin Brown, starting quarterback for Ohio State next year, and fans are going to love him.
Better question is, can CJ Stroud run the ball, particularly against Georgia? Your thoughts about it. Can he run, or will he run? That is the question.
Yeah, can he run? Yes, he can run. Will he run? I really do believe that he will run. I believe it's been a point of emphasis in the bowl prep. I think they've got some things in there that they're going to make it easier on him. Rolling him out, getting him on the edge, kind of get him going, get him in that movement early. I know that they've encouraged him to run. I know that they've pointed out to him that it's important that he run, and I think he will. I think he will. Now we'll see, but if over under on 25 yards rushing for C.J. Stroud in the Georgia game, and I'm betting over.
I hope he has over 25 yards rushing. If he does, we have a better shot of winning. All right, AZ King, Kirk, who are we losing to the portal after the playoffs besides Hayden? Well, I don't think we're losing Dallin Hayden, if that's who that Hayden is. I don't know if I really want to talk about who we're going to lose in the portal. I could see 8 to 10 guys going in the portal. I mean, obviously, Taraj is already committed to Florida. We kind of have this weird thing going right now where guys can they can get in the portal and stick around for the playoffs and everything. So, but I think there's going to be some guys hitting the portal afterwards. And again, guys leave after spring ball now too. So some guys will go through the first week of spring ball or winter conditioning and hit the portal when they feel like they're not getting a chance or they're not getting a slice. But I don't know if we want to name names. Nevada, I think I know you, but you don't want to name any names of who could go to the portal, do you?
Nah, unfair to the kids. I think it's unfair to speculate on something like that. I think there's two areas that we generally don't like to talk about. One's injuries. Two is transfers or potential transfers. Because I just, stuff like that can change. A kid could be talking about, I'm out, and then changes his mind. So I don't like to paint the kids with that brush. I'd rather talk about other stuff.
No, I totally agree. I think, you could have a guy who's like, I'm out. And then the guy in front of him tears his ACL and then he's starting or he's the top backup. So, I mean, it's just hard to speculate because anything can change, or some guy could say, no, I'm here. And then we go get a guy in the portal and he takes a spot, like if we go get the left tackle from Washington State who started from at left tackle, a pretty good player, and he gets slides in the left tackle, then someone might want to hit the portal because they're like, well, I'm not going to get a fair shake, whatever, and again, it's just so, the roster situation now is so fluid that I just, it's hard to predict anything. I mean, it's hard to predict, if a kid's going to commit here. I've seen some of the quote guru recruiting experts who pick guys like Tysier Denmark to come here, and then out of the blue, he commits to Oregon. I triple dog down that Tysier Denmark's coming, and he goes to Oregon. And did the information change? Did the offer get upped? I don't know, but I think it's a fool's errand anymore to project some of these recruiting things, because every single Ohio State recruiting guy and a lot of the national recruiting guys, they all said, "Oh, Mateo Uiagalelei, Ohio State's leading, blah blah blah." Signing day comes, it's quack time. The Oregon Ducks and Phil Knight came in and dropped the bag on his head. So I don't know. I think that some stuff with the portal, with NIL, projecting who could transfer, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense anymore for me. Again, there's a big rumor last year Evan Pryor was looking. I know for a fact he was considering transferring after the spring game. He never did. Tears his knee up, so who knows? Again, I think it's a fool's errand to try to project who some of these guys are. I think there's some guys that are going to be asked to transfer just because, with the portal, there's dead wood, and there's some guys that, they're coming on to year 3. they haven't made that move, and this is probably too big of a spot for them. This is probably too tough of a school for them to make an impact, and there's no shame in that. Like I said, everybody hits their wall at some point, and I think it could free up the roster if we go after some more portal guys. Again, we had the Jahad Carter guy. There's a couple tackles that we've offered recently. I think January is going to be a big month for the portal, just because we're finally not going to be focusing on the playoffs and all this other garbage. It's not garbage, but with early signing day now and getting ready to play the Georgia Bulldogs, like that's almost the most ridiculous thing ever. That the early signing day is in December, when it should really be in January or some other point. I know January next to February doesn't make sense, but it's really hard to have Ryan Day and his staff get ready to play in the playoffs, and then they have to be flying to South Dakota to go watch a Lincoln Kienholz football game. Like that's really really tough stuff. Nevada, any thoughts on portal, January portal? Just your general thoughts on the portal. Do you think we're going to be more active in it out of Michigan, or are we going to say status quo like we have been?
No, I think we're definitely going to be more active in it. And like you said, I think it's going to be a January thing for Ohio State. I mean, people looking at the recruiting class, and the recruiting class is totally fine by my standpoint. And again, people have to remember, it's not done. We're only, 3/4 of the way through or whatever, but the final story hasn't been written on this recruiting class. You've still got another signing day, and you've got an entire portal season to kind of go through here through January. So, no, I'm expecting Ohio State to continue to be active, continue to look to enhance the roster. And I like where they're sitting. They're in good shape. They've got a loaded roster coming in, and not a whole lot of gaping holes to fill.
Yeah, and we might win the Natty, and that might attract more guys. There might be more guys that, and when you win a national title, there's more guys that want to go pro, go out on a high note, win the national title. That opens up more spots. So it's kind of like a never-ending cycle when you talk about what the roster will look like, because even if you have a big, you add 5-6 guys in the portal in January, come spring there's a whole nother wave of kids that are going to be hitting the portal, unhappy with where they're at. They get beat out. They're a veteran guy. They don't like the new coach. They don't like the new scheme. They don't like the new coordinator. It never ends, which again, that is why being on a message board is like the greatest thing ever, because literally every single day there's something crazy going on that we could talk about. Nevada, I'm going to wrap this. Appreciate you guys being on this. This is 71 minutes strong. Great content. Appreciate all you guys. As always, you guys really make the show great. I love the questions as always. Nevada, any closing thoughts as we head into Christmas Eve tomorrow?
I'm just excited to see the Brian Hartline impact on the offense. I think it's going to be profound, and I think it's going to be something that's going to be palpable, and can't wait to see it on the 31st. I think everybody's going to be in for a treat.
Yeah, I think that when a wide receiver coach is running the show, you're going to see a lot of you're going to feature the wide receivers. Kind of like how Kevin Wilson, has been the coordinator, and we've seen more tight end and fullback usage, and those guys all sit in Kevin Wilson's room than we've seen in the lot, since the Jim Trussell era. So I think with Brian, it's going to be, let's feature these receivers, let's get them schemed up. He's not going to have to answer to anybody. He's kind of moving up the totem pole where he only has to answer to Ryan now. He doesn't have to run anything to Kevin Wilson anymore. So that'll be fascinating to watch. I think his synergy with Keenan Bailey is going to be fantastic for the throw game. Featuring the tight ends. You got some guys like Jelani Thurman coming in who I think could be a big add. I think Joe Royer is a super athletic tight end who, again, dealt with tragedy, kind of a lost season for him. I think he could have a huge spring and be a big impact guy next year. So a lot of fun stuff going on. So I'm going to wrap this thing up. I appreciate you guys. Merry early Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. This has been a fantastic show. We are on BuckeyeScoop.com. You guys still have a few hours left before Christmas. Would love to have you guys join our community on BuckeyeScoop.com. We are the premium Ohio State community. We have the highest quality information. We have the best posters. Again, it's real clean. The riffraff is gone from our site. If you guys could bang that like button, I would appreciate it. When this goes and closes up in the comment sections, opens up, comment who needs to step up for us to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. That would be huge. Appreciate you guys always. And also shout out where you're from. I I want to know where you guys are from. Any of you guys that are anywhere warm right now, we're very jealous of you in Ohio because it is really, really, really cold out. It is in the negatives. So I went outside for about 45 minutes to clear off the driveway, and it was terrible. So I'm not going to be going outside for the rest of the night, but I appreciate you guys as always. Hope you guys have a great night. Consider if any of your family, friends are the biggest Buckeye fans you know, best gift you can get them is a 1-year subscription to Buckeye Scoop. It is a fantastic gift. It is something that people, once they sign up, they never leave because the content is always flowing, the information and the discourse is flowing, and we have some of the smartest and biggest donors that belong to Ohio State's athletic community on our site. It is really, really fun. So we appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Again, Merry Christmas. See you guys on BuckeyeScoop.com. Go Bucks, beat the Bulldogs.